And so what do you mean? So you have some Italian blood in you?
I do. I'm a quarter Italian. My grandmother is 100%. My great grandmother immigrated over from Italy. She was from northern Italy, and she married one of those Sicilians. And so, as you know, when you do that, they kick you out of the country. So she had
Okay.
to go over. She had to go over to New York and be an American Italian. And she had 8 kids, and my grandmother was one of them, the youngest. And so large Italian Catholic family on that side. My mother grew up with 5 brothers and a sister. We didn't follow the traditional Italian
I
because
see.
somebody has to be in the military and somebody has to be part of the church, right?
Right,
So we
right.
did the military side, but we didn't do the church side. So it's just not proper Italian.
Gosh, but what do you mean you did the military side?
On my mom's side, my mother was in the army, and one of her brothers, yeah, one went in the Marine Corps. My grandfather was on my mom's side was a Marine in the Korean War, so they all joined the military.
Oh, good,
But
good.
none of them joined the church. No one became a priest, and we're like,
I see.
yeah, what did you do there?
No, no praise there. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know about it. And do you sometimes go to Italy, or have you ever spent time there?
Yeah, I've been all around Italy, from Agrigento down in in Sicily, the city of temples, and Marsala on the west. Good sweet wine there, all the way through Naples. You get the pizza there. You go up to Perugia, Rome, go north Tuscany. The Dolomites are my favorite area. They're just the
I
mountains
see.
there are drop dead gorgeous. Although it's weird because you go to certain areas, they start speaking German, and you're just like, I thought I'm in Italy. What happened here?
It
So
is.
yeah.
It's crazy. To me, it's crazy because I live in UK now for, I don't know, 9, 10 years. My wife is British, and but I do a lot of videos where I speak in Italian, and every time there are topics. Crypto is one of those
Right.
topics, for instance, that in this moment there is still a huge gap between Italy and the rest of the world, I think. So if I say, I don't know, NFT or crypto or any kind of Web3 related topic,
Right.
I would say a lot of people, probably majority of people, think, oh, this is, scam. This is not good. This is like rubbish. I don't know. Italy is a country that it resists to change a
I,
lot.
I wouldn't say that. I'd say
Oh,
there's a split because the Italians who speak English, a lot of them are pro crypto. The
yeah,
Italians whose English is not so good, or they just don't bother. You're right, and that group, I've noticed that the crypto competency is quite lower. But it depends. Italy
yeah,
is, people forget, is top 10 country in terms of GDP and huge capital markets. A lot of Italians are all over the place. Is actually one of the most prominent cryptocurrency entrepreneurs in our industry is Silvio Micali. He started
yeah,
Algorand, and as
yeah.
you guess by the name, he's proper Italian. He grew up in Italy, and Silvio is also one of the world's foremost academics. He got a Turing Award, which is the Nobel Prize of Computer Science, and so he's a professor at MIT. But I mean, yeah, that's one for the home team. He immigrated from Italy to the United States, and he still does do presentations in Italian and so forth. And so
It is.
there's always an Italian guy somewhere, or a gal somewhere that's
So
doing something. You can't not do it.
You are right. I've interviewed Silvio some times ago, and,
Yeah.
it was crazy because he started to talk math, and I say, Silvio, stop it! I can't. I lost you. At 1+1, I couldn't follow him.
Yeah.
But I think about Italy, to be fair, once we get it, so one like social media. At the beginning, people say no, social media is a scam. That's always the Italian
Right.
reaction. No, that's a scam. Internet is a scam. But when we get it, then we jump on it. And the
Right.
use for social media use was like massive. Or Amazon, I remember interviewed Jeff Bezos years ago because they launched Italy as like the third country in the world. And I say, why do you launch Italy? Because Italians, we are buying a lot. We were a
Right.
lot on social media. So I predict on crypto will hopefully be the same.
Well, here's the thing. You see, always when crypto comes to your industry, do you start adopting it? So the UK, for example, is a little ahead of the curve because it has such a big fintech area. But now
Right.
with NFTs, a lot of Italians are starting with fashion, other things. Hey, we should do something in the crypto space. So we've gotten a lot of requests to go out and talk to the fashion industry, and head out to Milan and other places to spread the good word of crypto. So I think while they're a little slower out of the gate than Germany or the UK, by no means is Italy out of the game, and it's definitely going to have a big impact.
Yeah.
The other side of things is the Italian government's always looking for ways to get more money from tourism and for more tax
Right.
revenue. just like the Greek government or others. And there's a lot of conversations about adoption of blockchain technology for anti-corruption, tax compliance, or these types of things. And this is another example where Italy is uniquely suited to actually make progress. There
Yeah.
are a lot of great Italian academics who are publishing phenomenal papers. BitML, for example, came out of Italy. It was in university, I forget which one, in
Right.
northern Italy. And so there's dozens of great people there. But it's okay. It's better than Spain or Portugal. It's better
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
Latvia. Italy's
Also,
making progress.
yeah. Also, Italy has, all the fashion district,
Yeah.
the automotive district. So that these industries,
Lamborghini, they're
yeah,
doing
Lamborghini,
NFTs. Yeah, Lamborghini,
Dolce
Ferrari,
Gabbana launched
Pagani.
the NFTs. So
Yeah,
definitely, we get in there. We get in there. But apart from Italy, I was distracted by this Ukraine
yeah.
situation, Charles. I really first I don't know. Maybe I just don't get it, but I don't understand how in 2022 you can go to war like that. It's something that surprised me a bit. I don't know if you were surprised or not, but I was not expecting this to happen, to be honest. So this was my first
Yeah. Well,
first reaction.
so we get as a CEO of a company, I belong to a lot of groups, and some of those groups provide OSINT, open source intelligence, and expert opinion on geopolitical events. So all the reports I was getting prior to the invasion was that the Russians were going to either do something restricted or they were bluffing. There wasn't a strong belief of a full scale war, full scale invasion outside of certain circles. The US intelligence community was saying that the Russians were preparing, but a lot of people were taking a position that they would go into the regions that declared independence and then run operations into Ukraine from here and there, like targeted strikes like drones and special forces. But a full scale invasion of 200,000 people in a forefront war is not only ambitious as hell, but it didn't line up with the capabilities of the Russian military.
Mm.
Um, One of the reasons why the United States is such a deadly adversary isn't because we happen to have all the best weapons or best training. We do, but we also have the best logistics and supply lines. And in war, you live and die by your ability to provision your soldiers to fight. So
Right.
there's tons of videos in Ukraine of these Russian tanks and Russian soldiers they're out of fuel and they're just waiting on the side of the road, or captured supply line people. And the Russian army wasn't really well set up and ready for this type of invasion. So it caught everybody by surprise. And I think what Putin was planning was that he was going to win within a week. The whole
I see.
Ukrainian government would crumble, Zelensky would flee, and that basically would be an easy acquisition. Zelensky, for those who don't know, he was an actor and he played the
Comedian.
Ukrainian president on TV. This was his thing. Everyone's like, "Yeah, we like this guy. Let's make him president." Yeah, I think he's just so nobody took him seriously, and now he's out there kitted out, and he's presenting a very strong front, and it looks like there's going to be a brutal Ukrainian resistance against Russia. There already is, so it's going to be much more expensive and time consuming. Now, what Putin was probably hoping for was he could take the country quickly, put a Vichy government in, and then negotiate with NATO and the US to remove the sanctions, and then give away the West again, leave that government in place, and then just take those two areas and get concessions on bases and missile placements. Now that he's in a protracted conflict, we're in a really delicate situation, because if he was to admit defeat, there's a good possibility Putin would be overthrown. And
Mm.
so you're in this situation where he has to win to preserve his power in Russia. But if there's a strong resistance, the only way he's going to win is with weapons of mass destruction. And so we've seen some very concerning things in the last few days in particular. The Chechen forces and the Russian shock forces are carrying gas masks and mop gear, which would indicate potentially the use of chemical agents. And then also the deployment of thermobaric missile batteries, which at the scale the Russians use them are pretty horrific weapons that are certainly war crimes if they
I
were
see.
used in urban settings. The other thing is Kiev is fully encircled. And recently today, the armor moved back, which is indication they're trying to let the civilian population flee the city. And that's a bad sign, because that would be an indication of a full-scale invasion of the city and a block-by-block bloody conflict. When you surround a city, you have two choices. Do you try to take it, or do you siege it and starve them out? And so the siege is you want to negotiate. The take it is what we did in Ramadi, the United States, and that was a brutal fight. It was block by block, and
I see.
snipers everywhere, IEDs everywhere. The soldiers actually took structures and lived in them, camped in them, and then would go take another structure and live and camp in it to gradually take over the city. It was a brutal conflict, and this could
So
be far worse.
I see. So the paradox is that if you want Putin not to use like weapon of mass destruction, basically you have to find some kind of way out also for him, a way that he somehow you negotiate and say, all right, you didn't really win, but you didn't really lose. You're still in power, but so it's a bit of a paradox.
And unfortunately, it's a lose-lose right now.
Right.
You always look for win-win in diplomacy. So the problem is that you can't let him win because you can't allow him to take a sovereign country that's the second largest country in Europe, 40 million people, just not tenable. And you can't legitimize acts of aggression. This is why the U.S. responded so vehemently with Iraq invading Kuwait. There was certainly oil and geopolitical reasons for that, but the whole world was united and said, we don't really want to live in a world where dictators just pick off smaller countries for fun, especially in the United States, because if Russia was successful with Ukraine, it would embolden China to attack Taiwan. So he has to withdraw. But he's now in a position where if he withdraws, he's overthrown. So how do you handle that? And the U.S. is now actively pushing for regime change. If you look at the sanctions on the oligarchs, that has less to do with making them bankrupt. These guys dig their trenches deep. What they're basically doing is saying, your life is going to be systemically more painful, and Putin is no longer good for you. So you guys get your shit together and figure out how to cut the head off the beast and have a regime change. He dies of mysterious causes or is
Right.
isolated or something like that. The problem is, unlike the fall of the Soviet Union, where you had to Gorbachev or Yeltsin, we don't really have someone who's strong enough in Russia, because Putin was very good at destroying those people, who could stand up and be legitimate resistance for a power transfer too. So it isn't clear how to get rid of Putin. It's not clear who would be the next person, if they're even any better than Putin. And also now we're in a situation where Russia is under very aggressive sanctions. Even SWIFT sanctions have come, and more will come. So the economy will start showing significant signs of wear within about 30 to 90 days. And then it'll just get worse and worse and worse, similar to what happened in North Korea. You'll start seeing starvation and martial
Right.
law and other things within 180 days to 360 days if they continue this tight bottleneck of sanctions. And inevitably, they're going to have to do the unthinkable, which is cut off all energy exports, in which
Right.
case that's pretty dramatic. Their ally set has diminished greatly. I mean, they only kind of have China, kind of have India. The only reason India is playing is because all their military hardware is Russian. And so they're like, look, America, make us a deal, give us your stuff and then maybe we can talk or something. But we're kind of in bed with these guys if we want national security. The other thing is India is geopolitically a foe right now of China. So, if India wants to play angry against Russia, US has to give them something against China. So that's one of the reasons why they're doing what they do. And obviously China and Russia have been very close for a while. They just did a 100 billion euro pipeline deal. And so they're trying to support their ally, but by abstaining in the Security Council, it's clearly showing that China is not fully aligned with what
Right.
Russia is doing. So they're isolated, very isolated as a country right now.
I really don't understand what Putin was thinking when he started this war. But I mean, this is like after I saw the picture where he's alone in a very, very, very long table, and at the end of the table there are. I mean, I imagine he lives in his own world now,
Right.
and he
Well,
takes.
it's like Mussolini with the invasion of
Right.
Ethiopia. His generals would tell him one version of reality about the
Yeah.
capabilities of the Italian military, but there was a very different reality. And they had this belief they just taken the whole country would fold instantly, and then it became a quagmire. So I think it's the same situation with Putin. That's people are so terrified of Putin that he's getting a
I see.
version of reality that is very different from reality. And so he's making decisions. And this is the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is there's a lot of rumors around that he has Parkinson's or some form of neurodegenerative disorder. And if you actually see the videos of him recently, he's a little puffy, like he's on steroids. So there's certainly some health issues that he's facing. And so the concern there is he could be suffering from early stage dementia. And if
I
that's the
see.
case, then you have an unpredictable person who's reliving the glory days of the Soviet Union, thinking that that's where he's at and he can play politics this way, and he doesn't have any checks and balances to stop him in that position. if that's the case, it's the worst case scenario because everything's on the table, including
Everything
nuclear
can happen.
weapons.
But what do you think about the fact that, I mean, gas is so important? I mean, I don't know, I think 40% or for some countries even more arrive from Russia. So they can say, all right, we stop. And that's a big problem for a country. I mean, probably they could negotiate there, because I see here in UK they have these sanctions and all right, get the billionaire and we block this, block that, and coming to crypto. By the way, Charles, I mean, I really appreciate your knowledge about this political situation. I want to talk about Cardano and crypto, but I mean, it's such an important topic, this one, and so I was curious about your opinion. But how do you see these sanctions and the negotiation about gas? Is it happening there? Maybe they find a solution there.
It's not 2000 anymore, and this is the problem with the Russians, is that they don't seem to appreciate that the world is moving towards a post-fossil fuel economy. And while yes, oil and gas matter, what they don't realize is that there's enough oil in just the oil sands of Alberta to fuel the entire world for 200 years. There's 1.9 trillion barrels there, and that's easy to refine. And you're using nuclear reactors for that to do the hydrofracking. We have massive reserves of natural gas in the United States. The U.S. is now the world's largest energy exporter. So we can send LNG to Europe, and yeah, the supply chain will be shitty for 3 to 6 months, but capacity can increase. There's tons of wells that are capped right now because the prices are too low. If Russia collapses, if their energy supply is taken off the market, it'll cause short-term pain, but then it'll create midterm massive increases of production in other places in the world, and long-term a wholesale switch to battery and hydrogen and other energy of motility. So if they overplay their hand, they're only going to have a moderate impact on the price at the pump and the price for heat and so forth, and long term actually destroy their entire marketplace. And if that happens, that's their only meaningful export. They're sure as hell not exporting cars and microchips and other things. So what is the Russian economy? It's a one-trick pony. When oil's $200 a barrel, Putin is king. They have no national debt and everything's great. When oil's cheap, they have to go put like some other guy to be president for 4 years to take the blame for it.
Right.
It's a hard situation for them.
You mentioned logistics before. I read that Elon Musk sent the Starlink's equipment, and on one side I thought, wow, this is incredible that you tweet and Elon sent you the kit of Starlink, right, and activate the satellite. I thought this is incredible. On the other side, I assumed that probably he called Biden and said, look, can I send, or maybe he did it by himself?
No,
I don't know.
He does it by himself. Biden doesn't like Elon. They don't talk to each other at all. In fact, Biden refuses to invite Elon to his little electric car things. Like the world's largest manufacturer and most powerful car company for battery powered cars is not even allowed to be in the conversation. Elon has a track record of just doing shit.
All right.
So he just woke up, just like for example, those kids that were trapped in, I think it was Thailand, and he built the submarine. He just does stuff. Yeah. So he's like, oh, there's something in Ukraine. Let's go do something about it. Okay. And he's, the world's richest guy. He can do this stuff.
Because on one side, I thought, wow, incredible. On the other side, incredible that he replied, incredible that he sent it. And in 48 hours, he gave Ukraine high-speed internet like that. So that right. I find it incredible from a technological point of view. I was just curious, the logistics. I mean, how do you send the satellite? Okay, he has this mega button in his room, probably click the button and the satellite is on. But how does he send, like in a war conflict zone, like a van full of equipment? This I don't understand.
Well, the same way you'd send military hardware. So right now, even though officially NATO is not getting involved, they're just fortifying the border, and they're just saying, hey, we will honor Article 5. I will put as much money as you want to bet down that there are special forces operator and clandestine operators that are in the country, and they're setting up what are called rat lines. So basically what they're doing is they're creating supply chains to be able to move military aid, whether it be small arms or vehicles or anti-air, into the country. It's very easy as part of that care package to include telecommunication equipment, satellite phones, satellite receivers, all kinds of things, as well as electronic warfare stuff. A lot of the Russians are using ham radio or some variant of it for their communications. They're not fully digitized. So people can jam those frequencies. They can do kinds of things to degrade the ability to communicate. So this is what special forces does and what clandestine operators do. They demoralize, degrade, resupply, and they provide legitimate legitimate insurgency support, just like the U.S. did in the 80s with the Mujahideen. They worked with the Afghan locals and they provided a huge resistance against the Russian forces. It's very cheap for us to engage in that. You just pay for the weapons, some training, and you get your people there. But that's what Green Berets are trained to do, and SEALs are trained to do, and so forth. This is their pay job, and then the Ukrainians do the rest. And the problem for the Russians is this is not a small country. It's like 40 million people, and so even if you take it, you're going to run into the same situation the U.S. ran into with the insurgency in Iraq, where it's just day after day of IEDs and terrorist groups and all these things that come in and just murder your soldiers. And every place you go, you always are thinking it's psychologically very traumatizing to the soldiers, because as they're driving, they don't know if there's a roadside bomb. When they go by a village, they don't know if a sniper is going to shoot at them, these types of things. And nobody sleeps well, and so holding that territory is going to be horrendously expensive in terms of forces, money, and intelligence support. And the Russians are not well equipped for that. We had to learn, the U.S. as a nation, how to do that. And it took 20 years and $2 trillion to build those type of capabilities. The Russians can't spend that kind of money to build these capabilities. So the only other option they have is terrorism. So use weapons of mass destruction on the population, hoping this will calm them down. If they use thermobaric weapons on civilians and chemical weapons on civilians, almost certainly NATO will put a no-fly zone in. And almost certainly will they actually move from a non-kinetic to a kinetic conflict. And at that juncture, it's very likely that the Russian air superiority is gone. And at that point, then it's a conventional land war. And you have 200,000 soldiers versus 40 million Ukrainians who are now getting NATO weapons. And they will be, within 6 months, properly trained and be able to field an army just as good as the Russian army. They're not going to win that fight. So it's a catastrophically bad decision, just from a strategic viewpoint. And it only worked if they could take the country in a week. But now that that's not probably going to happen, Putin has to find a way out. And if they're good diplomats, they got to engineer that with him to save millions of lives.
How do you see the role of crypto in all of this? The Ukraine government tweeted their address to get, I don't know, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and whatever, and they say, and I think they collected, I don't know, 40 millions or something like that so far. So I read some kind of argument that crypto is, let's say, is a force for good, and in case a conflict arrive, then you can have this kind of option, and you are not frozen, and once your banking system is frozen. How do you see it, like in the real world? Because you say I send my Bitcoin or whatever I send, and how does it work when there is a conflict there? And then so, because the theory, I understand the theory, but in reality I don't get it. How do you think it works?
Okay, well, the only thing that's working for the rank and file Ukrainian citizen right now are things like crypto or external accounts. So if you have a bank account in country, credentials in country, anything that requires a Ukrainian institution in country, either it's not working because it's been destroyed, Russian hackers have shut it off, or the government's not prioritizing servicing that because they're fighting for existence. So in other words, you don't exist. If you're a Ukrainian doctor, there's no way you can prove your medical license at the moment. If you have money, you can't go to an ATM, pull it out. You can't even leave the country right now. So the point is, transnational infrastructure, the more it controls over your assets, your identity and property, these types of things, the less vulnerable it is to an external power attacking it, hacking it, compromising it. So this is actually a gigantic advertisement for the value proposition, especially to small to mid-sized nations, of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. It's not just about finance, it's about national security. if you're attacked, how do you preserve the fidelity of your infrastructure and protect your citizens and make sure that that infrastructure can't be used against you? Well, how about you deploy stuff that's resilient, decentralized, Byzantine resistant, and can't be hacked? Wow, that's great. And in practice, if you have Bitcoin or some cryptocurrency, then you can show that to people and they will treat that like they would gold or money. And just think it yourself. If you're Ukrainian and you're trying to buy something from another Ukrainian, as the merchant, would you rather take the local money where you don't even know if that government's going to be in business, or
Yeah.
rubles where it's now a 1 to 100 for exchange rate? You're going to want euros. And unfortunately, they don't have a lot floating around. But cryptocurrencies, you can exchange for euros.
Yeah.
So you have that. You can send that to an exchange in America somewhere else. You can sell it there and you have it there. So it's as good as cash in that respect, and it has high credibility, and there's no trust in that transaction. So in essence, it's actually very effective. And I've had Ukrainian contractors for years now, and they for a long time have wanted to be paid in crypto, not US, and it worked out for them because we were paying at $250 Bitcoin. So they held on to it. So they're happy people.
Right.
So this is a good thing, I think, to advertise the space, if there's any light at the end of the tunnel, about the national security interest for small to mid-sized nations to protect national infrastructure, and also just the power of having a currency that's like gold, like a universal cash, that is useful everywhere and you can prove is useful everywhere when people are under duress. And now with Starlink and other things, people won't lose internet connectivity, even if the Russians destroy the cell phone towers or cut the fiber optic cables.
How is what's the next step? If I send, I have Bitcoin and I'm in Ukraine, now I have internet connection. So if I need to buy, food, how do you think it works?
Either you're going to try to exchange it to somebody who's carrying cash, US dollars or euros, or you'll have a merchant who's crypto friendly,
Right.
and then you make a deal with them, and then they take it from there. But basically, you just have to find a way to exchange it or have it accepted as cash. And in both cases, I think there's ample amount of people to do that, because
Yeah.
it's as good as cash, and you'll get a premium. Probably you'll get a 50% discount or something like that. So if the Bitcoin's worth 40,000, you'll maybe exchange it 20, because there's just war profiteers and they're horrible people, but they exist. But nonetheless, it's still as good as sending cash. And in many cases, it's much more effective than sending cash. The best thing the U.S. government could do is, if we still have installations that are populated in Ukraine, would be just to print money and hand it out to people, U.S. dollars, and hand them out there. By the way, that's how the U.S. Embassy destroys cash. Is they just a curious footnote: if they have, for whatever reason, to get rid of the cash at an embassy and they can't find a way to get it out directly, what they'll do is they'll take all the serial numbers and they'll burn it, and then reprint these same serial numbers on the U.S. side.
Really?
Yeah, it's one of the things the embassies do. It's pretty cool. Every embassy has they have burn bags and burn capabilities, and if they have to evacuate, destroy all
I
their
didn't know
documents, all their
that.
cash. Yeah,
That's crazy.
they keep a lot of cash at U.S. embassies for clandestine operations and other things.
So
But
they
anyway,
keep their serial number is sort of their private keys, and then
yeah,
they reprint it with those ones.
yeah. It's a little side thing that the U.S. government does. But they should really look at this. The advantage of having digital money. If you do, you can always just print and send it to people. So if we had a digital dollar or cryptocurrencies, then if we wanted to give aid, we could just airdrop to everybody in Ukraine who's a verified Ukrainian money, and that's humanitarian relief, and they have something there. But money only goes so far, because you need supply chains, you need merchants, you need in and out. And generally in these situations, you try to create some sort of no-fly zone and some sort of place to get stuff in. It looks like what they're choosing to do is just use rat lines to get things in. And so far, mostly it looks like it's military aid that's getting into the country. But facts and circumstances will rapidly change. It's important to understand it's just like a week old. It's not it's not an old conflict. This is just like, it just happened. And it seems like it took everybody surprise. I was certainly surprised.
Yeah.
And the OSINT community was incredibly surprised. Nobody thought that the Russians would be this stupid to go down this road. The best case scenario is they take the country, but then it's just like the dog who catches the car. What the
Yeah.
fuck do you do with it once you've bit onto the bumper? You're going to be dragged by the car. It's nuts to think he's going to get away with this.
Do you expect that other countries now will start to buy crypto just to have a little bit of their reserve, saying, look, if something happens, we get some, percentage of our GDP. I don't know, maybe in Italy, Mario Draghi say, look, let's buy a 10 billion Bitcoin just in case, something happens.
Yeah, I think Silvio would probably be a better guy for that. Berlusconi has always got to store his money somewhere, right? Those bonga bonga parties.
Silvio will find a way, I'm sure.
Yeah, he probably has some. Yeah, it's hard to say. I think it's a good idea, and El Salvador is leading the way in that respect. Yeah. Where crypto is really interesting is it gives you there are three parts to money. There's a means of exchange, a unit of account, and a store of value. What's really cool about cryptocurrencies is they let you separate two parts: the store of value from the means of exchange and the unit of account. And there are monetary economies like Argentina and other places, and usually it's because the local money is not so good. It's highly inflationary, so people fall back on dollars usually, or some other thing like silver or gold, and they store their value there. And then when they go to transact, they convert it to whatever the exchange is at that time and then spend what they spend, but leave their savings there. Crypto is much more efficient in this respect. You can leave your value in a deflationary cryptocurrency. In case of El Salvador, that's being done with Bitcoin. And then you spend in something else like dollars or the euro. Okay. So what's really cool about this prospect is that you're in a position where you could potentially use a cryptocurrency to create a stable coin. Those are called algorithmic cryptocurrencies, algorithmic stable coins. Like we wrote one called JED. There's MakerDAO. So longer term, you could actually talk about taking a position in Bitcoin as your national store of value, and then using that to construct a cryptocurrency that has pegged to the dollar, the euro, or a basket that's inflation resistant. What's really cool about this is that you get the best of all worlds. You get the constraint of a cryptocurrency, meaning you can't print money out of thin air, and it's a proper money. But then you get the transactional value storage and the efficiency of the US dollar or the euro, and your people can move before at a click of a button, one way or the other way. And I think a lot of that is going to happen with small nations that are actively changing their money. So if you're a nation recovering from hyperinflation or historically have a lot of problems, you're going to use this to de-dollarize and move in that particular direction. And then the BIS can't say shit. The IMF can't say shit. You're just there. Efficient markets are there. We're almost at that stage, I'd say, in the next 2 years or 3 years. And then I could see the Italians taking a position or the Greeks taking a position and so forth. It just depends on the progressiveness of the central bank governor.
Okay, got it. And what do you see? What do you think about the other side of the coin when people say, well, if Putin, for instance, has huge problem with this currency, well, he will just buy, Bitcoin, and you cannot stop him with the SWIFT. You have nothing, no sanctions basically you could use. And I mean, of course, the numbers that unless he already bought, but I don't think they already bought like, right. I don't know, trillions of Bitcoin. But apart from that, which is a little detail, so you should have thought before. But I mean, you need a lot of money. It's not that you go, and you buy £1,000 at a time. Yeah. So, but what do you think about this fact that you don't have control? You cannot force sanctions. That's the argument, basically.
I don't think that works, because at the end of the day, they have to buy shit with it. It's not just about controlling the money. It's like, well, if you're buying tanks and steel and food and other things, you have to buy it and have to ship it. So they're frankly significantly better mechanisms than just freezing bank accounts or these things to control the flow of material. But I mean, there's a great book. It's called Treasury's War from Montserrat. It was written back in the 2000s about how the U.S. used sanctions to prosecute the war on terrorism. Generally speaking, sanctions are tremendously effective when you talk about non-nation state actors like terrorist organizations or small countries. When you talk about large countries, their needs are so vast that just restricting the freedom of movement and the flow of materials into the country is catastrophic, because modern economies are not homogeneous. They require imports, and just cutting chip supply from Taiwan could be catastrophic. Cutting steel, cutting other things. They just don't have the domestic capacity for these things. And even if they do, you can use sabotage and other means to destroy that. And then it's devastating to the country. So I don't buy the argument, oh, well, crypto is going to be used to evade sanctions. No, it's actually beneficial to us, because right now There are tens, if not hundreds of thousands of Russians taking to the streets in Moscow, St. Petersburg, and other places and letting the world know they don't support this.
Yeah.
So it would be great for us to get them money. I can't wire them money. I can't like send a spy in with a bag of cash to give them, but we can send them cryptocurrency. And if that has markets there, then you're actually funding an opposition movement in Russia. That's significantly better for US and NATO interest than saying, well, maybe Russia will use cryptocurrencies. At the scale they would need it is too big for anybody to do business with them anyway. So there are other means around such a large nation to prevent them from having that impact.
Got it. How do you see Charles Cardano playing in all of these in this scenario? And by the way, I really want to tell you that every time I watch an interview of yours or a speech, I always really appreciated, Charles, the fact that you always talk about principles, because in the industry, sometimes people forget. I mean, I turned 50 this year, so I'm officially old, let's say that. And I really appreciate principles, because without principles, I mean, we already have, Facebook and Amazon. I mean, we don't need an alternative if it's still, centralized. And so I really appreciate that. And so I respect for Cardano and for your vision on this. But I was curious to understand, how do you see Cardano? Do you see something new for Cardano after this unfortunate situation in Ukraine, or just the roadmap keep going like it was before?
Well, it gives us more arrows in our quiver when we talk with the GovTech side, nation states, about why they should adopt crypto. So right now we're going over it's restore institutional legitimacy and more commercial opportunity and liquidity and benefits to your citizens. But now we actually get to say national security, which is great. That's a very strong argument for all nations, including the United States, because they see what's happened with the cyber attacks with Russia to there, and they get deeply worried that if there was an act of aggression, internal or external, that disruption of services is catastrophic for a modern economy. So being able to create resilience in government infrastructure there is an undervalued area. And I think it's something that most crypto companies, they don't think about, because they're at the scale of business to consumer and how do we get mass adoption in Silicon Valley and user experience. Nation states think differently. They have different demands, and liquidity, revenue compliance, and national security are huge concerns. And that's now another arrow in our quiver that we can talk about. But in general, Cardano has always tried to be the adult in the room as a protocol. It's why we're in Ethiopia, Burundi, Zanzibar, other places, and we meet with heads of state regularly, because what we're saying is, look, the world is changing. Globalization is going to happen whether you like it or not. And there's a lot of things you got to do because of globalization that if you don't do, your nation's going to fall behind. And it's going to be catastrophically devastating to your economy and people. No world leader wants to suffer that. So blockchain is really an alternative to what's being offered to them, which is find a patron, China, the United States, adopt their system and always be second fiddle. Because if you're a world leader, you want to be a world leader. You don't want to be told this is the way your money has to work by a foreign power. That's called colonialism. And especially in Africa, they've lived under that boot for over a century, multiple centuries actually. And it's been horrible, absolutely horrible for the continent. So they want a way out, and the way out isn't, well, play China against America or Europe against America or Europe against China. The way out is something new and novel, and it's different. And so principles matter, and having technology that even the president of your country can't manipulate or change because it's inconvenient to them is a very powerful thing. And that's the magic of what we offer is not don't be evil, it's can't be evil. And once you have that certainty, it breeds trust and direct foreign investment. You see, if the whole world knows you have incorruptible systems, when I make claims or ask for investment, I know that there's certainty that there's rule of law there, which means direct foreign investment comes in. Why? Because of greed. If you have an economy that's modernizing, there's so much arbitrage opportunity in that economy to make billions of dollars. And if I'm an investor in the US, what am I going to do? Buy a bond for 3%, 4%? When there's 20% inflation in the streets? I got to go somewhere else. And if I know I can deploy capital into Senegal or Kenya or Congo or someplace, and just by modernizing it, can get a 5x, a 10x, a 20x with a high degree of certainty of payback, that's where I go. And that means suddenly in a jurisdiction has never had investment, never had money, never had liquidity, capital markets, these types of things, now has an oversupply of capital. And because there's an oversupply, the prices go down, the interest rates go down, the economy grows wealthier. The other thing is the investments go into places that stay in those jurisdictions. It's not materials leaving the country like the lithium mines in Congo. This is actually investment in entrepreneurs, businesses, people who then keep that wealth, grow that wealth, and that economy becomes ultimately richer. So it's the best of both worlds. It's the restoration of faith and trust in institutions and creating liquidity for direct foreign investment. But when that investment comes in, the investment is intrinsically distributed as opposed to going to the hands of the few and being used to take money out of the pockets of the people. So governments, once they get this and they process all of it, they feel it, they understand it, and they say, yeah, I like that. I like being able to tell my people that I'm giving you control over your own destiny and we're ending the past. And we're now on equal footing with the United States and Europe and China. And we're negotiating as equals, not as subordinates. That's the message that they would love to broadcast and why it's becoming so popular.
What's the temperature in US about crypto? I give you an example here in UK. I've decided for a startup to move some part of the balance sheet into Bitcoin. Okay, just because of what you said. I mean, and or Michael Saylor every time say, balance sheet into Bitcoin. All right, good. So instead of keeping in pound, we say, all right, let's put, I don't know, 200K in Bitcoin, something like that. And damn, I mean, to move it from a bank, from a traditional bank, just to buy the Bitcoin, I had to give my blood, Charles. I was there and saying, guys, do you want my blood? What else do you want? It's my money. Can I do whatever I want with my money? So I don't understand why you have to, make it so complicated. I understand why a bank doesn't want me to move the money. But so at the end, we did it. So I would say still there is, the discussion is still long, let's say, to get to a point. I wonder if US is more advanced and maybe
Yeah, I wish you were right, but the problem is that we're doing everything the wrong way right now.
Right.
The state governments are embracing crypto at an extraordinary rate. State of Colorado, where I live, they basically say you pay your taxes in crypto. In the state of Wyoming, where I also live, they've passed 26 pro crypto laws, and we're having great progress there, and special purpose banks and all kinds of things. So at the state level, that progress is extraordinary, and I'd say it's equal to or greater than what we see in Switzerland and other places. At the federal level, there's a war of the titans. The legislative branch, the people who make the laws, are at war with the executive branch, and the executive branch is trying to dominate and control everything and protect special interest groups like the banks. And the legislative branch is fractured, but they want to pass new laws and create new regulations for crypto that hopefully are good for the industry. And so they're fighting each other, and there's no clear winner yet. And we are lobbying as a company, and our industry is lobbying for pro crypto legislation and rulemaking, but it is deeply frustrating at times. This is right now America's industry to lose, just like the internet was America's industry to lose. The majority of the prominent entrepreneurs, infrastructure, knowledge base, and engineering is mostly American, 50 to 70%, I'd say. But what's happened is because of this stupidity in the federal government, a lot of American entrepreneurs, businesses are outsourcing. They're leaving. They're going to Switzerland, Singapore, UK, Greece, anywhere they can that's different, so that they're not under U.S. jurisdiction for these things, and blacklisting the United States, saying we don't want to do business with the U.S. Just like banks are saying we no longer want to have U.S. customers as have bank accounts. So it's disheartening for me because I live in the United States, and obviously as an American, I'd like to see American leadership in this marketplace. But at the end of the day, this is beyond nation states. It's global technology, and for the good of humanity, this technology has to spread. And whether Ethiopia is the leader, or Kenya is the leader, or Italy is the leader, or US is the leader, we need somebody to usher humanity into a different way of doing things that ultimately is more fair for everybody. And it would be nice to see that continue being part of the American story. But, there's a reason why nation states decline. They lose vision, they lack leadership, they become arrogant and ossified, and as the British Empire did and others do. And if my nation wants to be a leader, it has to recognize humility and take a step back and embrace good ideas like our industry.
Yes, you're right. Sometimes it's frustrating. I give you an example. I launched my NFTs recently, and it's a utility NFT. And I have a big community of a lot of Italians around the world. And the first thing I said, I said, all right, I give you access, to my event, to my stuff. It's a utility, access to my things.
Right.
And then I say, my next book, I want to give a percentage back to my community. So I don't know, 20%. I will give back with the smart contract, blah, blah, blah. So I talk with the accountant here, and oh my God, he said, look, stop, don't even start with a, and I say, why? I mean, it's technically is absolutely easy and possible to do. So, and no, it's a security, whatever. I say, oh,
right.
shit. So I thought, all right, I'll wait a second, but that's frustrating because I think it also for the community would be great, something like that. I saw musicians doing it. So
and also anti-clarity. I mean, you say Ethereum's not a security, and then well, we weren't really serious. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We don't want to take that position. It's like, what are you doing? And then securities law, you want to do fractionalized ownership of a book, you should go through an IPO and register as if you're a $500 million publicly traded company. This is literally the clarity and oversight that we're being told. Oh, it's easy to register. Go register. Well, tell us how many people have. And tell us how easy it is and how many millions of dollars you have to spend in legal fees to go down that road for a profit share for something between maybe 50,000 people across the world, the vast majority of which aren't American. You might just have an American fan. This is the arrogance of the current regulatory structure and the tone deafness of it. And you typically see that when people have a monopoly and they've been in charge too long, they just don't care about competitiveness. They don't care about consumer friendliness, and they have to be reminded, usually by falling behind in a geopolitical event, that they need to upgrade, modernize, or else the whole thing comes falling down. As an American, it deeply frustrates me because all it does is just hurt us. We have $30 trillion in national debt. The only way we're going to pay that off and actually maintain our standard of living is by innovating. We're sure as hell not going to do it through some sort of federal program. So the only way we can innovate is by being on the forefront of modern markets like nanotechnology and biotechnology and blockchain and IoT. But if we destroy the bedrock of entrepreneurship through bad regulation, all you've done is you've just basically said, not only are you going to lose that industry, because you've lost it, you will now get systematically poorer and your national debt will move to hyperinflation. Your economy will collapse. So this is what our leaders want. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. Is what it is. And so hopefully wiser people will prevail, and leadership in government's going to have to make some decisions. And this administration and future administrations, as well as this Congress and Senate, as well as future ones, have all the available information to lead with wisdom. It's just their question of whether they want to do that, and history will hold them accountable one way or the other.
You said you're lobbying as an industry, and I was curious. That's a very stupid question, but I can't. I have to ask you, Charles. Do you have like a WhatsApp group, actually Signal group? I don't know, and all of the top founder of all the blockchains, the real Satoshis in the group, and you just chat to each other and say, guys, what are we going to do today?
Yeah, there are some industry groups, like Gabe at Bed runs one, and right. I'm members of them. And they're the big guys in the industry. We talk to each other in person at Satoshi Roundtable, and we also talk digitally through WhatsApp. But, we also have lobby groups like Blockchain Alliance and Coin Center and so forth in the US. And there are European equivalents and equivalents in Asia that do represent the industry. And they spend millions of dollars, and they have dedicated staff like Jerry Brito and his guys, and they work hard every day. And they remind people when bad things come out, like the infrastructure bill recently, or other terrible missteps that have caused a lot of damage. And we try hard as an industry to undo it. And the problem is our industry is very young. And when you're young entrepreneurs, you tend to undervalue the legacy system. So it's a little education and convincing and arm twisting to get people to lobby and invest in lobbying. They're like, screw these guys, we'll compete with them. I said, well, it's back and forth. There's a lot there. However, there's phenomenal politicians in the U.S. that are very pro-crypto, like Senator Lummis, for example, out of Wyoming. She's extremely pro-crypto. And so there are people at the federal government level, at the Securities Exchange Commission, Hester Pierce, the commissioner there. She's one of the 5, very pro-crypto. Bitcoin mom is what they call her. So there are some great people in and out of government.
How do they call her? Bitcoin mom?
Yeah.
Oh,
A wonderful
that's
person to interview, by the way, if you can get her. She's still at the
yeah.
commission, and very pro crypto, and very sensible and balanced in the policy. There are real consumer protection issues. There are serious things that have to be addressed and done. And yes, some people are securities and need to register. But at the same time, you can't just paint the entire industry in one brush. How boring would the world be if you could only paint with one color?
Yeah.
And and so you need diversity. You need different approaches, and that there's a lot of people who recognize that there needs to be different approaches and diversity.
Charles, what's coming next for Cardano in like the top priorities that say, look, this is really like my top 3 priorities for the next 12 months until we meet again. I'll bring you my Italian Pandoro, which is the cake that we bring for Christmas. It's not panettone, but Pandoro is a specific, fantastic cake.
Molto bene. It's good. Yeah, it's very good.
I will not bring the NFT of the Pandora. I will bring the real one, or actually the real one with an NFT that probably give you access to something. But yeah, what are the top 3 priorities for you now that you focus on?
Right now, I'd say commercial comparability, sustainability, and self-determination are the 3 big things that we're really working on. So in terms of commercial comparability, we focused an enormous amount of effort in the beginning of the project on correctness and scientific excellence. So we developed all these phenomenal protocols like Silvio did and others in our industry. And we got to a point where we kind of know the future. We know how to build great things, and we're gradually rolling those things out. So this year, all these updates are coming that are massively improving the scalability and expressiveness of the system so that you'll get the same type of performance you're seeing from systems like Solana and so forth, or at least in the same orders of magnitude. And there's a good commercial story there. So not only do you get all the security, the correctness, the resilience, and a great 3 million person community, but you also get the best of what competitors are bringing to bear. So June and October are going to be great months for us because those are the months where we're turning a lot of new features on, both in the improvements of Plutus, sidechains, pipelining, input endorsers, these types of things. And there's some phenomenal applied research threads like Hydra, which allow us to really honor what Lightning tried to do with Bitcoin and Plasma tried to do with Ethereum, because we kind of built these models together. So there's a very bright future in that respect. In terms of sustainability, you'd like a system that as it operates, it gets more efficient, more scalable, and it has the ability to grow at an organic pace, and the system contains that same cost center and standard of performance that you've come to know and love. The problem with cryptocurrencies is they're good and then not good. So Ethereum is good, yay, and then it gets clogged, and now it's not good. High gas fees, oh no, same for Bitcoin. So you want a system that as you grow, your user experience does not deteriorate. So that means you need things like Mithril, UTXO HD, these other technologies. Mithril allows you to have great light client support. So you have full node security, but with a cell phone client or browser, and you can just instantly be using it regardless of how big the blockchain is. Okay, and it's just the same user experience. And other things just to keep the system scale and also make sure that the system is always decentralizing. So the way we designed it, the more valuable ADA gets, the higher the amount of stake pools you're going to get. And as a result, as adoption occurs, the system becomes more secure and decentralized over time, which is a desirable feature. And then self-determination, which is unique to Cardano and a few others like Tezos, is we have a great governance layers. You hold data, you can vote, and you can participate in the governance of the system. So having the system have the ability to decide its own roadmap, decide its own vision, not Charles Hoskinson or some consortium or some group of officials, but rather the people who hold the data coming together and converging to where they want to go over the next 5 years is a high priority, because once you've done that, you have the wisdom of millions, not the wisdom of a few. No matter how smart I am, I'm not smarter than a million people. Okay, so there's so much diversity there. It's just harnessing that wisdom of the crowds. And then also Cardano has its own treasury system. So like any government, it has the ability to print money. And as a result, you can use that to fund its development. So it's not just self-determination, but it's also self-funding, self-bootstrapping. You get those 2 elements right, it's inevitable that you win, because you're always smarter. You always have the money to pay for growth. And whether it takes you 5 years or 10 years, you're going to get there because you don't regress. You don't lose people along the way. You just keep gaining. We're at 3 million. We were at almost nothing 4 years ago. And
Yeah.
we'll wake up, we'll be at 10. We'll wake up, we'll be at 50. You tell me people are going to leave when they're tattooing our logo on their body? You're nuts. You're crazy. No, they're going to stay. Their life, they're naming their kids after us. We're not going anywhere. You see, so there's an inevitability as long as we honor the commercial comparability, the sustainability, and the self-determination. And that's really where the priorities are right now. For me, as a private company, where I'd like to use Cardano technology is economic identity. So while the protocol is useful for everybody, equally useful to a person in Senegal as it is in Italy and Rome, as it is in Wyoming, for me, we're really focused as a company, IO is, in jurisdictions like Kenya, Ethiopia, and other places where we can get economic identity to people, loans to people, remittances to people, stable assets to people that hold their value over the local currencies. And there's a lot of great, cool stuff this year we're going to be able to talk about that goes from aspirational to reality. In Bermuda 8 years ago, I said, hey, this is what crypto can do in a TED Talk. Well, we're going to show the world that not only is that possible, it's been done for real people in these jurisdictions. And then if we get it right, very quickly, that's going to grow to millions, to tens of millions. And really, it's going to showcase the moral value and the principal value of Cardano, of creating one world marketplace where everybody's treated equally and everybody has economic identity and they can't be shut out just because it's inconvenient to somebody powerful somewhere.
That's the great vision and execution, Charles. Congratulations, really. Such a big pleasure to talk with you, and hope to meet you soon in person.
Oh, of course. It'd be great to see you in Italy somewhere.
All right, I'll see you soon. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.